Welcome back to part 2 of the epic TV series Tulsa King. This season brings on some new enemies while also dealing with the old ones. As Dwight's empire gets larger, so do the adversaries, so make sure you're strapped in, and as always enjoy the recap. Episode 1 of Season 2 kicks off with Dwight Manfredi handing in all his belongings before being taken to a holding cell. Once there, a lunatic swears and claims to be owner of the cell as he's done the most time. One of Dwight's temporary cellmates there seems to be in trouble for gambling away millions in government energy contracts, prompting Dwight to offer some calm advice ahead of what will likely be a lengthy sentence for the man. Dwight's first piece of advice: establish dominance immediately. To drive the point home, he knocks out the loudmouth punk in the cell.
Silence is golden.
Back at the bar, Tina has come to terms with her father's situation. She tells Mitch this has happened before and expects it to happen again before walking out. Grace, in the meantime, is quite anxious about what might happen to everyone, herself included.
Blew away 8 bikers. I think the feds are gonna dig deeper into their whereabouts.
Tyson tries to reassure her by pointing out that they disposed of the bodies in an abandoned mine, so there's not much to be concerned about. Goody then steps up, declaring himself as the new leader of their makeshift family while Dwight is in jail, though not everyone is happy with the call. With that though, he immediately sets them to work on finding new ways to make money. Once in court, the prosecutor asks the judge to deny Dwight's bail as he is both dangerous as well as a flight risk. Dwight shuts his lawyer up and tells the judge he doesn't even have a passport to be a flight risk. The judge agrees and posts his bail at $3 million, to which Tina decides to put up her house. As father and daughter leave court, they are flooded by journalists and reporters but ignore them all and escape the scene. At ATF headquarters, meanwhile, Stacy goes about her business when she is informed that Dwight made bail. This immediately gets her paranoid as she now believes herself to be a target. However, the agency is keeping Dwight in their sights at all times. Back in Brooklyn, Chicky talks with other heads of families and wants to make his position clear as the new leader of the family. With rumors going around about Chicky's dad's death, their plan is to silence them at their root. In Tulsa, ATF agents follow Tyson and Dwight around, with the duo having a laugh and conversation with one another. Dwight eventually notices the cars behind him. Telling Tyson to lose them, he does exactly that and puts the agents in the dust behind him. At the bar, Armand complains about paying the child support he owes as well as money to Dwight. Dwight then walks right through the door and the crew is back together. Mitch tells his boss his cousin Bigfoot needed a job and Mitch thought they needed a little bit of beef around them. Dwight loves the idea and loves how Bigfoot is a respectful lad and hires him. Once the unit walks away, Dwight mentions how he met a unique man inside who managed to scam the government $12.5 million in subsidies on a wind farm, saying there may be some ventures into the legal sector in the near future. The scene ends. When Dwight stops by Margaret's ranch later, she's already up to speed with the whole being arrested situation thanks to the local news reports. But she remains unfazed and invites him to join her at a fundraiser the next evening. With it being one of her clients' fundraisers, she mentions how he is super rich in the medical marijuana business and wants Dwight to buy a table at the event, promising to share a drink with him while they're there. Once Tyson and Dwight leave the ranch, they immediately notice the ATF is following them once again. This time, Dwight tells Tyson to pull over and wants to know what the hell they want. The agents, with their guns on the ready, pretty much say Dwight is not to go next to Stacy, which confuses him. That night, Stacy gets home from work to find Dwight sitting in her house waiting for her. She asks if Dwight is there to kill her, and he tells her of course not. He mentions his confusion as he would never harm and is upset to even hear it. Using his charm and charisma, he gets into the emotional, touchy side of things in life and says Stacy rekindled missing parts of his life and he is so thankful for that.
But I want you to know I have respect for you than almost anyone I've ever met.
This actually causes her to apologize to Dwight for what she's done, and with that, Dwight leaves and tells her he will see her in court. Once he gets in the car with Tyson, Dwight packs away his pistol. Tyson, funnily enough, actually wanted Dwight to bust a cap in her ass and the two laugh with each other and will leave her alone. The next beautiful morning in Tulsa, it's finally time to see Bodie. But before that, Tyson tells his boss he wants to become a rapper and needs a name.
I got a rap name for you, Serious ADD. Oh my God.
Going inside the even higher plane, the place looks new and innovative. Grace tries getting Dwight to have a little puff, but he rejects it. Fred then greets the two men, and as he walks away, Tyson is told to take the crew to grab a few suits for tonight. Going into the back, Bodie and Jimmy give him the rundown on how their insurance and all that type of stuff has gone up. Dwight then tells Bodie he has come past a weird opportunity, half-built wind turbines. With the owner getting locked up, Dwight wants to gain control of the subsidies and use that free energy to power their own hydroponic weed farm. Back with the crew, the tailor begins putting the gentlemen into different type of outfits. With all of them having fun picking and choosing, they end up looking pretty damn good, and the scene cuts to the fundraiser where the men wait for Dwight to arrive. Armand arrives before him though, and the idiot accidentally hits a car in front of him. The drunken fool then comes tumbling out and the valet Parker starts asking questions until Dwight appears and hands him some cash to overlook the predicament. He then walks to his men and wants them on their best behavior, especially towards the rich marijuana distributor and oil dealer. Once inside the venue, everyone splits and mingles. Armand is then approached by Dwight, who asks if he's drunk. With Armand representing Dwight as well as his business and crew, Bigfoot approaches and ushers Armand out of the fundraiser. Now comes the time of the hour. Margaret sees her friend and introduces him to Cal Thresher, the connected multimillionaire and weed distributor. Seems Margaret already gave Cal the rundown on Dwight Manfredi and leaves them be. This private conversation between the two quickly takes a wrong turn.
But if I were you, I'd stay in my own lane.
Dwight doesn't take too well to this threat and makes sure Cal understands you do not disrespect him and isolate him, or else bad things could happen. With Cal making sure he is claiming his territory, Dwight isn't too happy and decides to leave the fundraiser early. Back at the bar, Goody receives a call from his man Jerry back in New York. But Chicky picks up the phone instead and tells Goody his reputation looks bad as his own man left him for Dwight. Jerry then cops a bullet to his head, and we move to the following day where Dwight is flocked by reporters when he leaves court. Being at the front of the newspaper, he wants to find a new hotel to stay at. Elsewhere in Tulsa, Bill Bevilacqua receives a call from Cal Thrasher asking about intel on Dwight Manfredi. Bill knows of him and discovers for the first time that Dwight set up shop in Tulsa, the area that Bill and his crew run. Being Bill's territory, he vows to look into it, and the first episode shuts to a close. Episode 2 kicks off at the saloon where Mitch sings on stage. On one of the tables below, Dwight sits with his crew when a blackjack player loses his money. On his way out of the place, he just stares at Dwight, and we are taking an educated guess he is working for Bill. The next beautiful morning in Tulsa, Sirius ADD practices his rap outside Dwight's hotel. With the feds watching them, Dwight uses Tyson as a distraction to escape the reporters. The feds do follow him though, and end up at a home buying opportunity. Tina tells her dad that renting the place for $6,000 a month is pocket change compared to New York. In Kansas City, about 4 hours drive from Tulsa, Bill shows us his expert marksmanship when his man from the previous night arrives. He pretty much gives his boss the rundown on the situation, and Bill wants to fire a warning shot, and is not happy how them New York boys didn't even give him a courtesy call. Cal Thresher in the meantime speaks to the U.S. Attorney Dylan McGrath. With Cal having a favor with the U.S. Attorney, he wants it to come to light and wants Dwight locked up with guarantee, to which Dylan agrees to personally take over the case. Elsewhere, Armand complains to Tyson that he is out of money and is getting stressed out. Tyson calms his friend down and has an awesome idea in mind. Before finishing it though, Dwight and his daughter rock up. Dwight tells Tina goodbye for the time being and she drives off. Spencer then makes some small talk with Margaret and Dwight and leaves the two lovebirds be. The two of them talk and have a small laugh with each other until the scene cuts to black. Now it's time for good old court. Dwight, the freaking gangster, wants to represent himself. The judge makes him understand that no one will go easy on him, and if he messes up, it will be on his own accord. Agreeing to it all, the judge is happy to allow Dwight to represent himself, and just then, the U.S. Attorney also tells the judge he will be handling this case himself.
Real fucking Boy Scout. What a Boy Scout. Coming from my neighborhood, that's a compliment.
At a hotel, meanwhile, Tina is with her sons when her auntie calls her and says she's coming to Tulsa to help her set in. Back in Brooklyn, Vince gets a random phone call and hands the phone to Chicky. Seems Bill hasn't given his condolences yet, but doesn't give a shit. Bill says Chicky's crew intruded into his territory and he wants a cut. Chicky then laughs and says to give him a couple days to think about it. That night, Dwight and Bodie sit together and think about the type of person they want to select for jury duty. Seems an AI algorithm has come up with the best candidate as single, female, and been through a divorce, as they seem to be more sympathetic in a romantical case. The remainder of the crew meanwhile decide to break their way into the car dealership. Seems Tyson has come up with this idea to help out Armand with some free cash. Just then, they rip out a piece from underneath the car and plan on doing it to the whole lot. The next morning, Donnie arrives at the dealership and deals with one of his early customers. Promising that his selection of cars will have no issues and they are all on low mileage, the customer tests out a car to discover it won't even turn on. Donnie looks underneath the car, realizes he's been robbed and all his cars have the same piece missing. In jail, meanwhile, Dwight visits the person he had met earlier in lockup. Dwight then tells the man he would like to make a proposition to buy his wind turbines. Being worth $12.5 million, Dwight offers the man $7.5 and he agrees to the deal. Heading straight to the bank, both Dwight and Tyson ask for a business loan of $7.5 million. The banker says he'll need to speak with the bank manager, Karen. Coming down, she is given the rundown of the situation and she is in shock. Not being a commercial bank, the maximum they can give for a business loan is $3 million. However, she needs a lot of stuff.
Tax returns for the last 7 years, credit check, income information, market trends, competition, and how you plan to use the loan funds.
Dwight does not want to do that and refers to himself as Thomas Edison making a new idea and new invention, but Karen nonetheless refuses to give them without all details required. That night, Dwight sits alone in his hotel when his sister Joanne unexpectedly arrives. Being done with New York, she makes herself at home and tells her brother that he left Tina once already and wants him to make a deal with the prosecution. He refuses, and the scene cuts to the following day where Mitch gives Dwight his breakfast. But with everything being healthy on the plate, Dwight doesn't like it one bit, and Donnie comes storming in through the door. Donnie explains someone stole the catalytic converters on every vehicle on his lot. With the insurance needing weeks to restock and replace the damage, Donnie doesn't want this happening again, and Dwight gives him an offer.
In exchange for protection, you gift my daughter a new car.
Dwight will also try to get some of the converters back and throw in a guard dog for protection so this doesn't happen again. Once he leaves, Dwight tells Mitch he feels bad for the guy and wants half of his stock back. With Armand paying up his weekly rent for the failed assassination attempt from season 1, Dwight heads straight to the U.S. Attorney's office. Asking if there is a deal to be made, such as a $100,000 fine and whatnot, the attorney says there will be no deal until there is jail time involved. Dwight then notices that Cal Thresher is behind the U.S. Attorney's sudden appearance into the case, but when probed he remains silent and simply says everyone answers to someone. With that, Dwight gets up and leaves. In the meantime, Mitch arrives to see Donnie and mentions he found about half of the converters and Donnie is grateful. Mitch then butters up Donnie and asks if he is willing to sell the place. Donnie is quite interested, and Mitch tells him he'll ask his friend if he wants it. At the higher plane that night, the entire crew is enjoying their time when Bodhi mentions he's created an app called ChatCBD, the program that perfectly pairs the person with their plant. Grace then walks in on Dwight and tells him they have a celebrity. A man named Jelly Roll then appears and greets Dwight. Dwight has no clue who this man is and goes to sing. After the headphones are in, Jelly Roll starts with his song and Dwight is very impressed. Once he's finished, Jelly Roll says goodbye to Dwight and leaves the place. With Tyson and Dwight on their way home, Tyson receives a call telling him reporters are still outside Dwight's hotel. Needing somewhere to stay for the night, Tyson gets a mad idea. In the morning, Tyson's mother wakes up Dwight and it seems he crashed at their house for the night. Joining the father and Tyson on the table, they share breakfast, and the scene cuts back to Goody, who gets a call from Chicky. Chicky, however, says that Bill is on their case as he's invaded their territory. It is then that Chicky says he is throwing in with Bill and suggests Goody does the same. This will both save his life and make him the new owner of the crew in Tulsa once Dwight is dead. Episode 3 kicks off with Dwight giving a practice presentation to his crew. Once completed, the audience tells Dwight he's ready for court. With the beautiful sunrise coming up the next morning, Mitch and Goody are hanging out at the bar together when Chicky gives Mitch a call. He tells him that Bill and his men are coming down to Tulsa for a meeting and wants to know how it goes when they're done. Mitch simply asks who was calling, and Goody gets quite defensive, which raises an eyebrow. Meanwhile, Armand is going through his messy divorce and is being told by his ex that he will see the kids once every 2 weeks. Armand is not happy one bit, as she wants the house alongside everything else, which is about to cause Armand to blow up real soon. Back at the saloon, Mitch tells Dwight it may be worthwhile to buy Donnie's car dealership. With his uncle once upon a time owning a Ford dealership, Mitch believes he can run the show, and Dwight seems to like the idea. At the stable, Cal Thresher decides to pay Margaret a visit. It seems he's trying to pry into Dwight's life and wants to know if he and she are an item, asking why she won't be with him instead. Margaret makes Cal understand that Dwight's pinky ring alone has more class than Cal's entire body. Walking away, she says to deal with her stableman Armand from now on and leaves. Later in the day, Dwight arrives at his new rental property and is greeted by his daughter and sister. Dwight complains that he wants a specific chair for himself, but his daughter got him a different one, which makes him complain. Their neighbor, a little rich snob, decides to greet his new neighbors and hands Dwight a $100 fine for keeping his garage door open longer than 20 minutes. Being a breach of rules, Dwight has never heard of anything more stupid in his life, but nonetheless remains patient and lets the man leave without any difficulty. Once inside the house, Dwight continues complaining about his new stupid chair and his sister comes to run amok on him. The next day is the big day. Dwight leaves his house and gets ready for court. His annoying neighbor shows up again, complaining that Dwight's rubbish looks disorderly, and hands him a $150 fine. Dwight once again keeps his cool and lets the man be. Meanwhile, at the stable, Armand receives a call from Cal Thresher, who wants to meet him. Heading straight to the mansion, the two men greet each other, and Cal gets straight to the point, probing about Dwight. Armand reveals how his debts to his wife alongside child support and the weekly rent from Dwight are causing him significant discomfort. Cal opens a box and hands Armand $30,000. Before accepting it, Cal makes it clear that he expects a favor in return someday. At the courtroom, the U.S. attorney calls in their witnesses, asking them standard questions and receiving robotic responses. Dwight doesn't even bother arguing. Instead, he calls just one witness, Stacy. She walks into the room and swears herself in. Dwight begins by revisiting their relationship, getting Stacy to admit that she was the one who approached him first, the one who took their relationship to the next level, and most notably the one who saved his life and took a bullet for him. With the bribery charge looming over Dwight, he addresses the jury, stating that if Stacy did all that for him, kept coming back to his door and even saved his life, what would be the harm in giving her a thank you gift? When Dwight finishes, the U.S. attorney declines to cross-examine Stacy. Both the defense and the prosecution waive their closing arguments, and the jury is sent away to deliberate. As Stacy leaves the courthouse, Dwight chases her down and tells her that he truly enjoyed their time together and wants nothing but the best for her, even though she seems to be moving elsewhere for work. Shortly after, Dwight receives a call and is summoned to the saloon, where Bill is waiting for him. The two men introduce themselves, and the talking and negotiating begin.
General, I love that name.
What are you doing in Tulsa?
Let me ask you the same question. You didn't mention that Tulsa belongs to me?
Tulsa belongs to me.
It's been understood that Casey owns everything west of Chicago and east of Vegas. I hear you're a smart man. I'm gonna take a piece of this place. But like I told Chicky, I don't give a fuck if it's you or it's him. Someone's gonna start kicking up.
I don't answer to Chicky.
You don't even want to offer me a taste.
I am building something here.
You got a sense of humor. I'm gonna send Carl back with a proposition.
Once the meeting concludes, Tyson informs Dwight that the jury has reached a decision. In the courtroom, journalists and friends anxiously wait for the verdict. The judge enters the room, followed by the jury. With everyone silent and nervous, the judge is handed the verdict and gives the jury a nod of approval. One of the jury members begins reading Dwight's case number and eventually announces the verdict: not guilty. Dwight's crew erupts in celebration, and Dwight tells the U.S. attorney to give his regards to Thresher. Finally, free from the annoyance of the case, Dwight addresses the people of Tulsa, stating it's good to have a fair and just system. Meanwhile, Cal Thresher receives a call with the disappointing news that Dwight was acquitted. Back at the bar, Goody is informed that Bill's right-hand man is coming back with an offer that night. However, Chicky has no interest in diplomacy. He instructs Goody to lure Dwight outside and let the rest happen. Meanwhile, Dwight's annoying neighbor learns from the news that mobster Dwight Manfredi has been released but is still notoriously known for 2 murders in New York. Shocked, the neighbor nervously drives to Dwight's place. This time he apologizes for being a nuisance and waives all the fines, promising that this mess won't happen again before leaving in a hurry. That night at the bar, Mitch kicks off the celebrations and the crowd joins in. Dwight's crew is thrilled and Margaret even asks him for a dance. Goody informs Dwight that Bill's right-hand man is outside. On his way out, Dwight receives a hug from his daughter. Armand also pays Dwight the money he owes for last month. When Dwight steps outside, Goody and the visitor are waiting for him. Suddenly, the visitor pulls a gun but is immediately stopped by Bigfoot, who restrains him while Goody repeatedly stabs the assailant, killing him. Tyson offers to take care of the body and dispose of it discreetly. Back inside, Margaret notices a bit of blood on Dwight's face and cleans it off for him. The two then share a dance. The scene transitions to the following day, where Bill is seen leaving his luxurious estate. However, outside the gate, Bill steps out of his car to find his right-hand man dead, along with a clear message from Dwight. Episode 4 starts early in the morning, where Bigfoot drops off a quiet Tyson at his parents' home. Before leaving, Bigfoot tells Dwight that Tyson handled things well. Dwight tells Bigfoot to stick around and keep watch. Inside the house, Joanne is already awake, her worry apparent. She confronts Dwight, feeling uneasy about his recent actions, especially since they live in a secure neighborhood with guards stationed outside. Dwight tries to reassure her, insisting they aren't in danger. Joanne, however, isn't convinced. Dwight admits they had to take down a made man from Kansas City who was targeting him. Joanne challenges him, pointing out that he not only provoked but killed one of Bill Bevilacqua's men. She warns Dwight that Bill won't back down and that it's not just him at risk, his family and friends are in danger too. Meanwhile, Tyson spends time with his dad Mark, helping him fix his old van. Tyson offers his dad money for a new vehicle, but Mark firmly declines. Back at Dwight's house, he shows his grandchildren how to throw a proper punch as they prepare for their first day of school. However, Tina steps in, reminding Dwight that the kids attend a non-violent school and should turn to their teachers if they face any problems. Dwight, however, cautions them never to rat, giving his own take on handling trouble. Later, Dwight confides in Tyson, admitting he could have handled things differently with Bill Bevilacqua during their first meeting. He reflects that making a deal might have been the smarter move. Tyson, however, disagrees, pointing out that Dwight isn't the type to do anything halfway. The duo heads to the even higher plane, closing the store abruptly and sending the customers away. Dwight informs Bodhi that trouble might be on the horizon following the Carlo murder, warning that they could all be at risk. Bodhi, furious, storms out with Tyson trailing behind him. Bodhi vents, explaining that he didn't sign up for this kind of chaos. He wanted Dwight's help with white-collar crimes, not to get tangled up in murder. Tyson tries to reason with him, insisting they're in this together, but Bodhi isn't convinced. Tyson then addresses the rest of the even higher plane crew, delivering an impassioned speech. He declares that Bill Bevilacqua thinks Tulsa belongs to him, but in reality it belongs to them. He offers anyone the chance to leave if they want out, but no one takes it, not even Bodhi. Meanwhile, Cal Thresher pays a visit to Armand, handing him another envelope stuffed with cash. Cal presses Armand about where Dwight gets his weed. Armand the moron says Dwight is scouting a location up north, possibly tied to a wind farm. After Cal leaves, it dawns on Armand just how deep the trouble runs. At the wind farm, Dwight, Mitch, Bodhi, and Tyson meet with a Native American family who will act as the face of the business. Med Hat proposes taking 20% of the energy produced by the wind farm, a term Dwight finds reasonable. However, Ahanu pushes for 20% of their weed sales as well, which Dwight considers excessive. Med Hat then reveals they've received another offer just an hour ago from Cal Thresher. Bodhi reassures Dwight that they can make the numbers work. Eventually, they strike a deal, helped by Med Hat's mention of a special program that could assist with repairs. Meanwhile, Bill Bevilacqua calls Chicky, seething with rage. He's furious that Goody didn't betray Dwight and vents about having to bury Carlo's body in the woods rather than giving him a proper burial. Bill demands Dwight's death and abruptly ends the call.
Bill! Linda Caputo's been calling. Can you please stop doing that for a second? Carl didn't come home last night. Can you call him at least?
Well, then you call him. I'll give you his number. Well, I'm not his secretary, okay? He's a big boy, makes his own decisions.
Is he coming home or not?
I don't know.
Elsewhere, Vince mocks Chicky by suggesting that his father Pete would have resolved the feud between Dwight and Bill. Drunk and agitated, Chicky implies Pete didn't die naturally, hinting he may have killed his own father. Vince is visibly disgusted, and Chicky soon passes out. While Chicky is unconscious, Vince takes a call from Bill, who's fuming over Chicky's failure to follow up with a new plan. Bill voices doubts about relying on New York. Vince seizes the opportunity, proposing that he and Bill handle Dwight themselves, especially now that Dwight is on high alert. Bill immediately warms to the idea, and Vince promises to reach out through proper channels. Elsewhere, Cal Thresher confronts Jackie, a stakeholder in his weed farm, telling him to stop growing and selling poppies on the property. Later, Cal demands 50% of the profits from any heroin Jackie has already sold, irritating Jackie. Their partnership takes a dark turn when they discover two trafficked Chinese workers caught stealing. Cal suggests beating them to send a message to the others. Instead, Jackie shoots both men in the head, coldly stating this is how he deals with anyone who takes money out of his pocket. While all this takes place, Goody in the meantime is living on the paranoid side of life, thinking everyone is out to get him. He even pulls a gun on a random man, which he quickly realizes is no threat. Elsewhere, Mitch and Dwight reconnect with Donnie Shore. By the end of the meeting, Dwight agrees to purchase Donnie's dealership at his asking price, largely due to the inclusion of Donnie's General Motors license, which allows Dwight to sell GM products at a significantly lower cost than typical dealerships. Dwight also persuades Donnie to stay on for a few months to train Mitch and ensure a smooth transition. At the end of the episode, Dwight confides in Mitch at the bar, sharing his regrets. He reflects on his inability to control his impulses and how he didn't have to choose the gangster life as a young man. Mitch responds by calling Dwight a searcher, predicting that he'll always chase the next big thing, even after achieving his goals. Episode 5 kicks off nice and slow with Dwight helping to take his grandkids to school. There, Bigfoot stands guard and Dr. Fogel comes out to greet the family. Vanessa then offers to take the kids inside while the doctor escorts the parents through the school. Right off the bat, Dwight doesn't really like the school and thinks the all kids are unique mentality is a load of crap. With there being no proper sports in the school and everything centered around making all the students feel the same and welcome, Dwight remains unimpressed. Tina, however, likes the school and thinks it would be a good fit for her kids. Back on the higher plane, Bodhi tells his men to be on high alert, not just high. Bodhi then tells Grace that Dwight's sister might stop by later to learn the trade. Saying he needs to go to the wind farm to check on the repairs, Grace asks about the hydroponic greenhouse ETA and if she could work there when it's ready. Bodhi doesn't mind that idea and leaves the shop. The scene then cuts back to Dwight, who mocks the school for even keeping the points off a basketball game to avoid upsetting the kids.
They're training them to be patsies and fall guys. Wimps.
Joanne immediately jumps to Tina's defense, making Dwight understand that the world he grew up in is long gone and that he needs to adapt. Refusing to admit that change can be good, Dwight brushes off her words. At Donnie's shop, they're waiting for approval from GM. But in the meantime, Donnie wants to show Mitch the ropes. Explaining that success is all about service and marketing, Donnie dives into human psychology, mentioning that his fake cowboy persona is designed to be a universally admired all-American image. Back in New York, Vince tells his man Johnny, aka the Zip, to clean up the place. The Zip questions why Chicky has trusted Goody again, but Vince brushes him off and mocks Chicky by sitting in his chair. Pointing out that this is Pete's spot, not Chicky's, Vince and the Zip begin to suspect that Chicky might have killed his own father. When Chicky walks in, the conversation abruptly ends, and Vince instead brings up how he wants to stop the tit-for-tat shit. He proposes a sit-down with Bill and Dwight. Chicky initially refuses to meet with Dwight, but ultimately agrees after some convincing.
It's the right thing to do.
Isn't asking for your fucking permission.
As Tyson and Dwight strategize about their next move with Bill, Dwight shares a notorious story about two families locked in a senseless, bloody feud that led to mass casualties for no reason. The lesson: all they had to do was bide their time. Even though it might make them look weak in the short term, patience was the right play. Dwight believes Bill is in a similar position, carefully considering his next move. Meanwhile, the New York Mafia reaches out to Bill. Vince takes the call and informs him that all three parties will be having a sit-down. Initially resistant, Bill is eventually persuaded by Vince's reasoning. Before ending the call, Chicky abruptly grabs the phone, spits out a time and location, and hangs up. This earns him a subtle side-eye from Vince before the scene shifts. Back with Dwight and his crew, they brainstorm ideas for their new car dealership. Dwight suggests putting Mitch in the commercials and deciding on a name later. Shifting their focus, the group heads to another investment, where Bodie meets his new business partners, and they get to work on repairs. At the stables, Dwight and Tyson drop by unannounced to collect their weekly paycheck from Armand. Tensions flare when Tyson and Armand get into a heated exchange, while Dwight steps away to talk to Margaret. Dwight casually asks if she's free for the evening. After playing hard to get, Margaret agrees but warns him about Cal Thresher, describing him as an obsessive control freak with ties to criminals like Jackie. Dwight chuckles, dismissing the warning with a promise that they'll all get what's coming to them. Later at the bar, Goody takes a call from New York. Vince reassures him that he's not looking for trouble and insists that he's changed. Vince emphasizes the unspoken code among them: never reject a sit-down. Goody agrees to ask Dwight about it. Meanwhile, Cal Thresher pays another visit to Armand and notices Dwight and Tyson are there. Without hesitation, Dwight confronts Cal, threatening to break his jaw if he doesn't stop meddling in his business.
You're in so far over your fucking head.
You're in over your head out here, pal. Saved by the bell.
On his way home, Dwight gets a call from Goody, who informs him that the families want to have a meeting in Atlanta. Dwight says he'll think about it, and Mitch continues counting the green stacks at the bar. Cal Thresher, in the meantime, pulls some men out of the field, and Jackie wants to know exactly what they're doing. With Cal refusing to say exactly what it is despite it being Jackie's men, the two leave each other on a sour note. Cal takes the two carloads of people down to Dwight's wind turbines, and Bodie gets whacked. The rest of the men get down and begin ransacking the place when Jimmy alerts Dwight to the situation. The men at the wind turbines watch as all power is cut loose, and finally, Dwight and his men arrive. Getting out of their cars, a battle starts. Mitch, Dwight, Bigfoot, Tyson, and Goody take out one assailant at a time. Their intruders stand absolutely no chance, and every single one of them is going to wake up with a headache. With the intruders running away, one is left and is questioned on who sent him. Forced to resort to torture, the man admits it was Thresher, and this is a declaration to war. Over at Bill's place, Cal decides to give him a call and wants to compare notes about Dwight. Since Bill has gotten his Chinese partner to buy himself out of Cal's business, he doesn't want to deal with him and practically brushes him off. That night, Dwight meets Margaret at a new Italian restaurant. Out of nowhere, the waiter approaches and goes to open them a bottle courtesy of Cal Thresher. Dwight gets a sneaky idea and makes the waiter bring out two of the most expensive bottles they have in the cellar, and another one for a random table. At the start of Tulsa King Season 2, Episode 6, Dwight tells Tina and Joanne he's heading to Atlanta to handle an issue. He's surprised when Tina already knows it's for a sit-down with Bill in New York. Tina insists she wants a gun, and though hesitant, Dwight asks Mitch to teach her how to shoot. Mitch immediately takes Tina to a shooting range where he teaches her how to handle a gun safely. Tina quickly gets the hang of it, impressing Mitch as the two clearly enjoy their time together. Later, when Dwight asks how it went, Mitch calls Tina a beautiful and determined woman. Elsewhere, a stressed Armand visits even higher plane to pick up more gummies. A bruised Bodie walks in, catching Armand's attention. Armand questions him, and Bodie says being attacked is just one of the risks of working with Dwight. Bodie eventually reveals the attack was related to Cal Thresher, which leaves Armand visibly worried about what's happening around him. Armand decides to confront Cal. He acknowledges the $50,000 he's received but points out that Cal's actions against Dwight and his crew are putting him in danger. Cal dismisses Armand, calling him a child for failing to foresee the consequences of his involvement. When Armand tries to back out, Cal turns threatening. He claims he owns Armand now, warning that if Armand stops helping, he'll have him skinned alive and send his tongue to his children. However, Cal has problems of his own. After Dwight and his crew beat Cal's guards, Jackie becomes enraged. Jackie accuses Cal of making them look weak and complains about the rising medical expenses for the injured guards. Jackie reminds him their focus is supposed to be growing weed, not escalating personal conflicts. Later, Jackie orders Cal to deal with Dwight for good, insisting that real enemies aren't defeated with half measures and demands immediate results. At LaGuardia Airport in New York, Chicky forgets about the gun strapped to his ankle and is promptly arrested by airport security, leaving Vince to head to Atlanta alone. In Atlanta, Dwight, Goody, Bill, and Bill's right-hand man wait at a soul food restaurant for Chicky and Vince. They're surprised when Vince arrives solo, explaining Chicky's arrest. The sit-down begins despite Chicky's absence. Bill declares that Tulsa has belonged to Kansas City for decades and accuses Dwight of refusing reasonable offers while lacking both backing and a proper crew. Bill calls Dwight an outsider. Dwight counters, saying Bill wouldn't have cared about Tulsa if Dwight hadn't been sent there by New York against his will. If Bill is owed anything, Dwight argues, it's New York that owes him, not Dwight. Bill insists he's owed money in revenge for Carlo's death. Vince suggests cutting Bill into Dwight's weed business. Dwight offers 15% off the top in exchange for Bill's security and distribution services. Bill reluctantly agrees to the terms. When Bill asks what New York brings to the table, Vince mentions fake Ozempic, prompting Bill to mock how far New York has fallen. Dwight and Bill shake on the deal, but when Vince asks what New York gets, Dwight and Bill walk away, leaving Vince empty-handed. Back in New York, Vince explains the outcome to Chicky, who assumes the meeting was postponed. Furious to learn it went ahead, Chicky explodes when Vince reveals the details. Dwight will pay Kansas City and New York is left with nothing except fake Ozempic for Bill. Chicky insults Vince, calling him an idiot, but Vince fires back, reminding him that Chicky's airport arrest caused the problem. The argument escalates, nearly ending in a fight before Vince storms off. In Kansas City, Bill begins to regret the deal, feeling like he's been outmaneuvered and left at a disadvantage by Dwight. After the fight with Cal and Jackie's gang, Dwight and his crew grow increasingly wary of retaliation. Bodie decides to close the store early, and Dwight warns Tyson to stay vigilant at all times. Tyson soon notices a car trailing him, raising further alarm. When Mark Mitchell's car refuses to start, Tyson calls Dwight, who offers his own car for Mark's plumbing jobs. Tyson drives Mark to his work appointments, but at the first house, Tyson is surprised to learn Mark is paid in chili instead of cash. After a long day, Tyson calls Dwight again, this time asking to buy Dwight's car as a gift for his father. Dwight agrees, and Mark is overjoyed. The father and son share an emotional embrace. However, the next morning, tragedy strikes. Tyson notices a car speeding away, and when Mark attempts to start the car, it explodes in front of Tyson, leaving him in a state of shock. The next episode begins in the hospital where Tyson's family is joined by Dwight and Goody. With no information yet about Mark, they all wait until the doctor finally approaches and says Mark is a lucky man, as only half of his body was inside the car at the point of explosion. Needing a couple surgeries on the right side of his body, he should make a good recovery. Tyson begins yelling and saying Bill is going to cop a bullet for this, but his mother slaps him and is disappointed in the life that her son is choosing and wants them all out. Back at the crime scene, the ATF as well as the FBI say the explosion went off earlier than expected, and the bomb was meant for Dwight. Outside the hospital, Dwight makes Tyson understand no one is to make a move until they know exactly who they're going up against.
You sign up for this.
But what'd you sign up for?
To be you.
Once at home, Dwight gets a visit from the FBI who want to know who tried to kill him. Dwight tells them to beat it, and at Donnie's car dealership, Tyson approaches Donnie and asks for a car in the nicest possible way.
I don't got time for your shit. All right, well, that's what the fuck I got. Let's go.
At the bar, Mitch, Goody, and Dwight know that this assassination attempt could either be Cal Thresher, New York, or Bill. Almost immediately, Dwight gives Chicky a call and directly asks if he was the one that tried to kill him with a bomb. Chicky laughs and says he would use 2 bullets to his skull, not a bomb. Dwight then asks for Vince, who confirms that it wasn't them. Once the call ends, the men leave Chicky and Vince alone, who have another argument. With every one of Dwight's crew on full alert and paranoia kicking in, Bodie tells all his workers he'll pay for their Ubers to and from work. Bigfoot and Dwight in the meantime go to Mark and Tyson's last plumbing job, and Dwight hands the man some cash for access to his security camera. The man invites him in, and the scene jumps to the hospital where Tyson is metaphorically told to get away from his family. Back to the tech whiz Bodie, he analyzes the camera footage and sees the Prius that was chasing Tyson around all day. Getting only the first 2 letters of the number plate, Dwight decides to pay his old driving instructor a visit. While in the middle of a test, Paul is told to get out of the car and once again is told to run another number plate for him. Being quite reluctant at first, $10,000 is enough for Paul to agree on the deal. Chicky meanwhile gives Bill a call and wants to know if he was the man that tried to kill him. Bill adamantly says it wasn't him and believes it may have been Chicky's doing instead and wants to be kept out of the mess. Armand is once again paid a surprise visit from Dwight, who asks him what he and Cal Thresher talk about when they're together. Armand tries to deflect, but when Dwight says if he's ever mentioned the turbines, Armand simply says he's caught in the middle, which gives Dwight all the intel he needs. In New York, Vince links up with some of the OGs and vents out that Chicky is a stupid hothead. He asks for their advice in going to Dwight and making a business arrangement with him and to make things right. But Chicky needs to be moved to the side so that the Invernizzi family is safe. With the men saying they need to go to their bosses and need this claim to be sanctioned, Vince agrees, and the men call him smart for not taking matters into his own hands. Back with Cal Thresher, Dwight runs up on him alongside Bigfoot. Dwight has one simple question: why would a useless weak bitch like Cal stand up to a gangster like Dwight? Asking about the bombing in the white Prius, Cal plays dumb and Dwight tells him that if he discovers Cal was involved in the slightest way, his entire empire alongside himself will be buried in the ground. Stating his point and walking away, Jackie witnesses the whole ordeal, and Thresher asks Jackie if it was him, but Jackie doesn't say a word to Cal and makes a phone call to a man named Hanjan to come to the spot. At the bar, a depressed Tyson is approached by Mitch, who tries to help his friend out, giving him some life advice and saying stuff like it wasn't your fault. Tyson wants to kill whoever was responsible, which he thinks is Bill. Bill, in the meantime, tells his high-ranking men that this situation needs to be fixed. His men, on the other hand, believe that it may have been New York, but nonetheless, they should jump in and finish Dwight along with Tyson off. Bill says maybe down the road, but that is not happening right now. With Dwight and Margaret having dinner that night, Paul calls and says the car is owned by AGV Imports and passes over the address. Once the call ends, Margaret confesses this type of lifestyle turns her on a bit. At the hospital, meanwhile, Tyson goes to have a look at his coma-induced father. Not wanting to wake him up, Tyson just speaks and admits he knows the choices he has made may not be correct. But if he turns back now, what was it all for? With his father acknowledging he can hear his son, Tyson asserts that he will not let this go and says he loves his father before leaving. The next day, Jackie reveals he was the one who tried to kill Dwight and lets it be known that when dealing with a snake, you go for the kill and chuck it away. Cal is pissed off at the stupidity of his business partner and knows once Dwight finds out, things are going to get ugly. With Jackie promising to get rid of the evidence, he begins by killing off the only witness. Soon after, Mark awakens from his slumber and immediately calls Tyson, only to reach the voicemail. But Tyson, waiting outside Bill's place, holds a gun for the right moment. Mark immediately calls Dwight and asks where his son is and is very worried. Dwight then goes to call Tyson, who answers his boss. Dwight mentions he has the address of the white Prius, but it is too late. One of Bill's men opens fire at Tyson's car and Tyson returns it to get a marksman shot. With adrenaline pumping, Tyson speeds off with Dwight hearing the whole ordeal. Episode 8 begins with Dwight lecturing Tyson, warning that in the real mafia his actions could have justified severe consequences. Tyson defends himself, saying it was for his father, and tells the crew they can get rid of him if they want. Dwight reassures Tyson that he's family and they'll always have his back. Dwight then calls Bigfoot, asking him to investigate a white Prius registered to AGV Imports. Meanwhile, Bill Bevilacqua meets with his crew to discuss Vic, who's in the hospital after taking 2 bullets. Bill vows to hit Tulsa hard. During the meeting, Chicky calls to check in. Bill tells him about Vic being shot in his driveway again and angrily declares he'll kill Dwight, unaware the FBI is listening through a wiretap planted in the room. Later, Armand meets Clara and confesses someone paid him to spy on Dwight, leading to the attempt on Dwight's life. He says he's considering entering witness protection with the FBI and asks Clara to join him. She refuses, saying she wants to move on. Enraged, Armand swears at her and kicks her car door before she drives away. Elsewhere, Dwight meets with Tina and tells her about the incident with Tyson. He urges her to take the kids and leave, suggesting New York. Tina, disappointed, says he'll never change and agrees to go, but warns that if the family breaks again, it can't be repaired. At the hospital, Tyson visits his father, who questions where he was the night before. Tyson lies, but his father presses him, doubting his story. Tyson's mother appears but can't even look at him. After he leaves, his parents discuss, fearing they've lost their son. Bigfoot calls Dwight to report that AGV Imports is just an empty lot. Dwight tells him to pick him up so they can investigate together. Later, Armand lashes out at Spencer, completely losing control. Margaret intervenes, realizing he's drunk, and tells him to go home. Armand shouts that he doesn't have a home and blames Dwight for ruining his life. Margaret fires him on the spot, and Armand storms out. Meanwhile, Tina packs her car, says goodbye to Joanne, and leaves with her kids. In a meeting, Dwight informs his crew that Bill's men were targeted. He orders them to close the shops and prepare for war. When asked if Tyson was involved, Dwight says the less they know, the better. Mitch and Tyson meet with the owner of the car lot to pick up a new car. Tyson requests the Escalade, which Donnie gladly hands over, knowing the lot will officially be theirs by tomorrow. In Chicky's crew, the group discusses Bill's imminent move against Dwight. Vince suggests it's better if neither side wins, since the victor would gain more power and double their territory. Chicky shuts him down, telling him to stay in his lane. After Chicky leaves, Vince tells the others it's time to get rid of Chicky, either by killing him or finding another way. During Dwight's meeting with his crew, they discuss potential shooters and backup plans, but are interrupted by 2 federal agents. The feds question Dwight about the previous night's shooting and warn him that Bill is planning a hit on his crew. After they leave, Dwight and his team agree their options are limited while dodging the feds. Later, Cal and Jackie meet but are interrupted by Armand. As Jackie walks away, Armand begs Cal for help, fearing Dwight knows he's been talking to him. Cal, indifferent, tosses a $100 bill on the ground and leaves. Dwight returns home to find Joanne, who informs him that Tina and the kids have already left. Saddened, Dwight regrets not getting to say goodbye and not wanting them to leave at all. He then calls Chicky, warning him that his family is returning to New York. With a chilling tone, Dwight threatens that if anything happens to them, he'll take out Chicky's crew one by one, painfully and slowly, and demands the message be passed along to Vince. At the shop, Bodie and Jimmy tell the crew to leave, saying they'll finish packing up. The crew agrees, leaving the 2 of them to handle the rest. Meanwhile, a drunken Armand calls his son, who doesn't answer. Speaking into the voicemail, Armand expresses regret for his choices, saying he has one more thing to do and won't be seeing him for a while. He asks his son to remember the good times before taking another sip of his drink. Elsewhere, Mitch and Tyson load up weapons, including heavy artillery like grenade launchers, preparing for the looming conflict. At Dwight's house, 2 of Bill's men stake it out but are confronted by the annoying neighbor who scolds them for parking there. To avoid drawing suspicion, they reluctantly leave. Cal and Jackie resume their tense conversation. Jackie recounts how, as a refugee, he learned to be ruthless. He hands Cal a contract demanding the transfer of his entire business for just $1,000. Surrounded by Jackie's men, Cal initially refuses, throwing the contract to the ground. Forced to his knees at gunpoint, Cal eventually accepts his fate and signs, relinquishing his entire operation. At Chicky's meeting with Vince and the crew, Vince orders him to sit and takes his gun. Vince announces that conversations with the other families have led to a decision to sideline Chicky. He warns Chicky to be grateful they didn't eliminate him entirely. Enraged, Chicky charges at Vince but is restrained by the others. Vince and Fat Jimmy criticize Chicky's poor decisions, blaming him for sending Dwight to Tulsa and escalating their problems. Vince declares that the family is now under new leadership, effective immediately, and advises Chicky to take a few months off. Furious, Chicky spits on the table and storms out. Back in Tulsa, Bodie and Jimmy discuss their situation, with Jimmy remarking that this was inevitable. Suddenly, a car carrying Bill's men drives by, and as Bodie takes cover, Jimmy is gunned down as the assailants speed off. Bodie immediately calls Dwight, who gathers the crew to respond. Bill's men inform him of the hit on Dwight's guy, but Bill is furious as he wants Dwight dead. Cal then decides to visit Bill and begs for help, saying Jackie is out of control and took everything. Bill dismisses him until Cal reveals that Jackie orchestrated the car bombing targeting Dwight. Enraged, Bill screams at Cal, blaming him for starting a war. At the safe, Goody is withdrawing cash when Armand enters. Visibly on edge, Armand pulls a gun on Goody and demands the money. Shaking, he fires a warning shot and Goody complies but warns him that Dwight will find him no matter where he hides. Armand frantically fills a bag with cash and once secured, he flees, leaving a stunned Goody behind. Episode 9 begins with a funeral for Jimmy, where the Indian clan gathers to bid their good friend farewell. Each friend shares a few words honoring Jimmy's memory. 2 members of the clan approach Dwight and hand him a traditional axe on behalf of Jimmy's mother, who insists he should have it. In their conversation, the Indians express their desire for retribution. Dwight assures them that justice will be served, and the Indian warriors pledge their unwavering support. In the car, Bodie sheds his pacifist stance, bluntly asking when they plan to kill Bill. Dwight calmly reassures everyone that the time for action is approaching. Meanwhile, Armand, carrying a stolen bag of cash, reaches the border. Overwhelmed with guilt and confusion, he wrestles with his decision to leave. Cursing himself, he ultimately turns the car around, choosing not to flee. Goody later confronts Dwight, warning him that if he finds Armand, he will kill him. He reveals that Armand has stolen $500,000 and fled, emphasizing the urgency of locating him before he can go to the FBI. Elsewhere, Vince calls Chicky, instructing him to bring Dwight back into their fold. Chicky contemplates the demand before ending the call, his decision uncertain. Meanwhile, Bill meets with his crew to discuss their next steps. They consider reaching out to Dwight to propose a truce, framing the conflict as a misunderstanding. As the discussion unfolds, they deliberate eliminating Cal, to which Bill agrees, but only when the time is right. Back in Tulsa, Tyson calls Dwight to inform him that he still hasn't located Armand but promises to keep searching. After hanging up, Dwight turns to Joanne, suggesting she consider leaving and going to New York with Tina for her safety. Their conversation is cut short by a knock at the door. Bigfoot arrives, announcing they have a visitor. Meanwhile, Bill and Cal meet up. Cal laments losing everything, and Bill reminds him he warned him about Jackie. Determined to resolve the situation, Cal proposes a plan to get to Dwight and put an end to the conflict. The next day, Cal visits Margaret at the ranch. He pleads with her, describing Jackie as a psychopath trying to take over everything. Cal asks Margaret to speak to Dwight and convince him that Bill wasn't behind the assassination attempt. It was all Jackie. Later, Tyson visits his father, who is recovering at home. When Tyson's mother arrives, the tension between her and Tyson is intense. Tyson's father, however, insists that family is the most important thing and urges them to repair their relationship. After an emotional moment, Tyson and his mother embrace in a heartfelt hug, reconciling at last. Dwight, Goody, and Bigfoot meet to strategize, but they're interrupted when Margaret requests a private word with Dwight. She reveals that Cal owns 49% of the ranch and claims Jackie was responsible for the car bombing. Dwight, however, is resolute. He's done talking and refuses to meet with either Bill or Cal. Back in New York, Chicky attempts to book a flight but discovers he's on the no-fly list due to his recent arrest at the airport, leaving him grounded and frustrated. Dwight reluctantly agrees to meet with Bill and Cal, making it clear he's only there to listen. As tensions rise and arguments flare, Cal steps in to mediate, emphasizing that Jackie is their real enemy. Cal reveals that Jackie has been forcing everyone out, including himself. Dwight, unconvinced but intrigued, promises to think it over and leaves. Meanwhile, Armand meets with Jackie, who accuses Dwight of wanting him dead. Armand warns Jackie that everyone knows he was behind the car bombing. Growing agitated, Jackie devises a plan, suggesting they ambush Dwight at the ranch when no one else is around. Late that night, Jackie and his men arrive at the ranch, guided by Armand. As they move in, the lights suddenly snap on and Jackie's men are gunned down and stabbed by the Indians who joined the massacre. By the end, most of Jackie's crew is dead, except for Jackie himself, who is shot in the leg. Mitch and Bigfoot drag Jackie into the barn as the Indians offer to handle the bodies. Dwight tells Bill they'll talk tomorrow and dismisses him. Inside the barn, Jackie is tied up and held over a freshly dug grave. Dwight hands Tyson the Indian axe, urging him to deliver the killing blow. Tyson hesitates, but with Dwight's encouragement, he finally swings the axe, striking Jackie in the head and killing him instantly. Armand enters the barn, revealing himself as the visitor who had tipped off Dwight the night before. Dwight admits he nearly killed Armand, but stopped, offering him a chance to turn his life around. Together, they devise the plan to lure and eliminate Jackie. With Jackie dead, Dwight declares that everything is settled. Bigfoot buries Jackie, and the episode ends with Chicky traveling by bus, determined to confront Dwight. The season finale starts at Cal's farm, where Cal mentions is 18,200 acres big. Thanking Dwight for taking care of Jackie and saving his business, he asks Dwight for the price he wants in reward. Dwight tells Cal that he should be grateful he is breathing air, but if he doesn't accept this deal, he'll join his friend in the grave. While Cal wants to handle the situation like businessmen would, not thugs, Dwight calls upon Bigfoot to kill him. Cal holds tough though and calls his bluff. But nonetheless, Dwight is taking all of Cal's business and mentions how Cal is not equipped to be in the underworld.
Forget the gangster life. Leave the gangster life to fucking gangsters.
Cal finally agrees to the terms and says he is tired of this business. Tyson congratulates Dwight for his new 18,200-acre farm. The crew then leave, and back on the ranch, Margaret discovers a bullet on the floor and hides it. At Donnie's dealership, meanwhile, Donnie counts the stacks as Mitch signs away and becomes the official owner of the place. The two gentlemen shake hands and the deal is officially complete. Vince, meanwhile, decides to call Dwight and says New York is under new management and Chicky is out, claiming he is now in charge. Vince gives Dwight the heads up that Chicky is on his way to Tulsa and has been given an ultimatum to convince Dwight to return to New York or never return. Vince doesn't want Dwight accepting the deal and wants Chicky to be done for. But with that, Vince says no matter what has happened, he wants them to move forward together. Dwight laughs and ends the call, but leaves the conversation on a good ending. Once at the bar, Bill pays Dwight a visit and asks if Dwight is going to cut him in on a deal.
50%, it's the right thing.
So you're getting 25%.
Bill isn't happy with a mere 25%, but Dwight argues against it. Seems the two men can't reach a conclusion and Bill storms out of the place. Chicky in the meantime storms into even higher plane demanding to see Dwight. He threatens Fred and Grace and forcibly kicks Bodie out of his office. When Dwight arrives, visibly furious, Chicky insists he comes in peace. Admiring what Dwight has built, Chicky argues that Dwight belongs in New York, not Tulsa, blaming his father for sending Dwight there. Chicky proposes that they take Vince out and run New York together. Dwight firmly states that his life is in Tulsa and confronts Chicky, accusing him of killing his father. He orders Chicky to leave. As Chicky walks out, he declares he's not going anywhere without Dwight. Back on the ranch, Armand goes up to Margaret and apologizes for his previous behavior. Stating the divorce and his kids got into his head, he is much better now and asks for forgiveness, to which Margaret accepts. Later, Chicky meets with Bill, declaring his intention to reclaim what's his. Over drinks, Chicky blames Dwight for all their problems, suggesting that Dwight's unchecked ambition has made them both look weak. Chicky proposes they eliminate Dwight and asks for Bill's help. At the saloon, meanwhile, Ahanu is told he'll be taking over Mitch's role at the bar. Agreeing on a deal, the scene cuts to later where both Chicky and Bill visit Dwight. Together, the duo mention they have a proposition. As all three families want claim to Tulsa, Chicky mentions how they can expand to Nebraska, Iowa, Arkansas. Building a somewhat franchise, they'd split the profits between the three of them, and Dwight asks for Bill's thoughts on this.
What do you think?
Don't worry about him. Everybody wins.
50%. You earned it.
Later, the crew gathers to watch the commercial together. Dwight follows up with a heartfelt speech expressing his happiness at seeing everyone so gratified. He proudly notes that they're now running legitimate businesses, free from the need to constantly look over their shoulders. He also assures them that everyone will receive their fair share from all the ventures. However, Dwight's optimism may be misplaced. The FBI discreetly requests access to his files. At 3 a.m., as Dwight and Margaret sleep, their door is suddenly kicked in by armed men dressed in black. The intruders cover Dwight's head with a hood, escort him outside, and take him away. He is taken to a dimly lit room, where an enigmatic figure coldly informs him, "You work for us now. Thanks for staying until the end. Make sure to check out some of my other bangers, and as always, stay awesome and take care."